like this place. I've enjoyed this place, and I wish I knew it existed when I was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I had known about the University of Jyväskylä when I was 14, I would have paid anybody. I would have figured out how to learn Finnish from age 14 to 18 so I could come here and do a bachelor's. Because that's genuinely how impressed I was with the university. Of course, from my own field. So I'm talking about physics and, mathematics. I can't comment on about anybody else's field. That's why we have other people come to the podcast.
Terve ja tervetuloa. This is JYU for You podcast. My name is Alina, and I'm not the person who you usually get to see on this couch because today I'm hijacking the host position from Irfan to interview him. He will tell about his detour to America before coming to Finland, why does he do the second masters, and how to become a podcast host when being an average student at JYU. I hope you will enjoy this episode, and I'm wishing you a good day.
Okay, Alina, you're going to have to do like an official sentence. That's your beginning. What is your sentence?
I will do the clapping.
Okay.
Now we record. Now we start.
Okay, now we're officially... So is that what you're going to do?
I have already done it.
So are we recording now?
Yes.
Have we started? See, it's more difficult than it looks, isn't it?
It is. And you have to be like mentally prepared that, okay, now we are recording. So how are you?
Oh, I'm still processing the fact that, is this the official start?
Yeah, if that is the official start, we've been chit-chatting for 40 minutes already trying to start the recording. So
I think we've been talking since yesterday. I think we started this yesterday. I'm good, a little bit tired. I just have to say, it's very strange to be on this side of the couch. On this side of the dividing line. Is this how it felt to people when you cross between Checkpoint Charlie during the Cold War, you're going back and forth?
well, I wasn't alive back then, so I cannot say I'm not a proper source, but who knows? It's a good perspective for you for the further episodes. You will know how it feels to be on that side of this wonderful table.
Yeah, no, I apologize to all the guests that I've had so far. It's kind of a dull view, I have to say. The view is nicer from that side. So how is the view? How's the view from that side?
Yeah, the view is very nice. It's actually great to see you. It's been a while.
Hey, likewise. It kind of pains my heart that both of our schedules are ridiculous. So the most effective way to actually find time to chat is hey, do you want to co-host today?
Yeah, and thank you for inviting. It's an honor.
I'm pretty sure actually that you volunteered for this, so...
Did I? Oh, yeah, that's actually what I do in my life. I volunteer for stuff and stuff happen.
Have you ever regretted volunteering for something?
It's supposed to be
Yeah.
me interviewing you, not other way around. But to answer your question, no. I mean, everything you do in life gives you some sort of experience. Don't you agree?
Oh, so now you're the one who don't you get an extra philosophical power when you're sitting in that
No,
in that couch?
not really. I'm in general very philosophical.
Yeah, PhD students flexing over here that you got one higher degree than I do.
Well, I do not yet have it.
You're closer to it. You're close enough.
Okay, yeah. How has the semester started for you?
Oh, honestly, kind of strange. I gotta say, it was a little bit weird to kind of come back, and this is my return into physics after being out of that field for a couple of years. So that I did I've just finished the master's in mathematics.
Yeah, that's something that we need to discuss because it is an unusual choice to do a master's after master's.
Well, do you want me to answer that now, or is that your punchline for later?
We can do it to make it more logical for the people who will try to comprehend whatever we are trying to say here. We can return to that conversation later.
I mean, good luck to anybody who's trying to comprehend me saying stuff. I always say I've never envied anybody who had to interview me, because I think some people are really easy to interview. They have a very linear thought structure.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you've had coffee with me. You know how my thought structure is. It goes a little bit everywhere. And some people who have a very linear pathway, is kind of easy to follow them around. If you have a little bit of bing bong bing going around in every direction, gets a little bit trickier. But honestly, kind of entertaining. kind of entertaining when you're. It feels like ever played a video game and you learn all the little hidden nooks where all the treasures are, and at what point you need to click X to pass, to do that. At what point you need to do the double jump to make something work out or whatever. That's kind of what it feels like when you're doing a second master. It's like, yeah, I kind of know all the principles and things and what I'm supposed to do. So it kind of feels like you're going on a highway. It's like you've already traveled this road, but they made a new skyscraper over there. Oh, they demolished that one. Oh, that guy's still selling hot dogs over there. So it feels like it's a little bit of a transition. But very fun to be back in a field that I haven't touched in a couple of years. So that's kind of entertaining.
This is nice. So, getting a little bit to a more structured approach, before you decided to do a master's, you decided to come to Finland. Can you tell a little bit more about how did it happen in your life? Because you are from the country that is quite far away from Finland, and it's not the most obvious choice. So let's dive into this topic.
And I think I did probably the unexpected detour.
Yeah, exactly. That's an interesting point.
So where do you want me to start? Should I start in the day I was born?
Probably not. We do not have all the time in the world, because knowing our communication styles, we would probably end up talking for 24 hours and nobody gonna watch it ever.
Oh, I mean, we've already been. This is hour 76.
Oi, oi.
So kind of to make a long story short, I'm originally from Bosnia and Herzegovina, Sarajevo, or Sarajevo as we call it. And I kind of always thought about studying abroad, which I think you can probably relate to, being from a Slavic country. You always have this idea of I should probably go somewhere, better opportunities and whatever. And for me, the perspective originally was, let's go to the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of like a tangential idea that I had in my head for a long time, which kind of started becoming concrete when I was maybe 14, 15. I had this interesting opportunity to study in the States for high school for a year. There was this program called the YES program. Have you heard of Flex?
Yeah.
Okay, so Flex is basically, so YES is kind of like Flex. And they made it in 2001 to basically bring closer students from Muslim majority countries and kind of bridge this gap that had occurred in the early 2000s between the United States and Muslim majority countries. And that came to Bosnia in 2009, and I had the opportunity to participate in the program in 2015, 2016. And I actually genuinely liked my high school experience in the States.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lot more chill than it was in Bosnia, because I went to a really difficult high school, which had a lot of its own merits, the classical gymnasia concept.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that type of stuff.
The 17 classes, it's lovely.
Yeah, I had 18, so yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I love it how you have to emphasize, I had one more. Did you
One more?
Did you have ancient Greek?
No.
I had ancient
I had Finnish.
Really? In your gymnasia?
Yeah.
That explains why you can actually speak Finnish.
Yeah, okay. We're jumping.
anyway, but so then I had the opportunity to study in the States, and I kind of liked how much of an applied approach they had in high school. And I had this one really cool physics professor in high school, Thomas Whitty, very witty guy. And I think he was maybe the first one who kind of gave me this idea of hey, maybe you could, do your bachelor's in the States. And then when I came back to Bosnia, I was like, okay, let me actually research this. How difficult is it to do a bachelor's in the States? And I realized it's pretty straightforward. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not easy. There's this wonderful, do you know who's Conan O'Brien?
The name rings a bell, but I cannot connect it to a person.
So talk show host. And he has this thing where he said in one of his shows, he says, because he went to Harvard, he says the difficult thing about Harvard is not attending Harvard. The difficult thing is to go to Harvard. And that's kind of, I think, a general thing about education in the States. The education system is not really that difficult based on most metrics. And I'm probably going to get in trouble with my American friends because saying that. Sorry, guys. But I thought to myself, this would be a good opportunity. And it was difficult to get there. There were a lot of, standardized tests. There were so many essays. Compared to the application process for Finland, it was a nightmare. But I got through it, and I managed to actually get full funding for a couple of universities in the States, and I ended up choosing Williams College in Western Massachusetts. And then I attended that for 4 years, and I got a triple major, which always sounds really funny when you say it in Europe, because I technically I have a bachelor's in mathematics, a separate bachelor's in physics, and a separate bachelor's in German. So
Whoa.
three in one. And I always say like I'm not as clever as I seem. It's just the system worked well enough for me to make that happen. But then after that, I just had this moment of like, I don't really want to stay in the States. And if you want to ask questions about it, we can elaborate on it. And then I came to Finland, accidentally discovering how do we pronounce the city nowadays? It's Jyväskylä. Jyväskylä, I believe, is the pronunciation. You're the one with the B1. Is it Jyväskylä? I always got to double check myself.
It is.
But and yeah, then I came to Finland, did one master's degree, and I was toying between a PhD and doing another master's. And I really liked the department in which I did my master's in mathematics. Like the math department at JYU is genuinely lovely. But there was this like one nag that I had in my brain, like, I think I'd want to continue going back into physics, because I originally in high school did like the physics Olympiad and stuff, and I had like a big interest in physics. And even though I got a bachelor's in physics in the States, let's just say the experience was not the greatest. So I moved away from it, and then a couple of people at JYU actually encouraged me. They said like, hey, JYU has a great physics department as well. It's not worse than the math department. So if you ever have the opportunity, might as well do that as well. And then the opportunity presented itself, or I guess we created it by me applying to it. And that's where we're at. That's kind of like that's the long story short.
That's like short summary, but let's dive into details. It is very unusual to go to the US, first of all, like absolutely other side of the globe, super far away from your family, from your friends, change of environment. And then you make a decision that, okay, I'm going back to Europe, but you didn't come to your home country. So can you elaborate on your decision making there and what made you consider moving back?
Okay. So that one I actually need to collect my thoughts for a second. So let's go back to, when was this? This was fall semester of 2021, going into spring 2022. So I was still at Williams, and I had a couple of ideas what I could do with my life. One option was to do a PhD in mathematics, and that was something that I was seriously considering because I was very...
You were finishing bachelor's.
Huh?
You were finishing bachelor's or master's?
No, bachelor's. So the way that it works in the States, you can go directly into a PhD after bachelor's.
Lovely. Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, because the PhD is usually integrated. Like a master's degree is integrated within the PhD.
Okay, I got it.
And there's this funny thing where like technically you can do a master's in the States, but the masters are ridiculously expensive and it's not really worth doing a master's in the States for the most part. So people just go directly into PhDs. But then you can do this like little trick. If you do a PhD, you can master out and like, you get a master's degree, but you didn't pay anything for it. Scam society. Anyway, so I thought about going into a PhD, and I thought I was prepared for it just because I worked with some really good mathematicians in the States, and I had this lovely thesis advisor, Stephen J. Miller. Cheers, Steve. And I thought to myself, okay, maybe I could do a PhD in mathematics, but I wasn't really in love with mathematics enough in a particular field to do a PhD. And kind of the way it works in the States is if you want to do a PhD, you really want to jump immediately into a particular field. And I wasn't at that point sure, like,
well, in general, with PhD, you have to be very specific.
Yeah, but if at least like, here you have this transition period between bachelor's, you explore the field a little bit more in the master's, and then during the master's, you're building up that mathematical maturity in this sense, and then you can kind of zone in on a field a little bit better. Over there, it's kind of like a very quick, okay, I need to decide what field I'm going to go into, what professor I'm going to apply to. And I wasn't really ready for that. So then I thought about going into actual work. And there were a lot of options for like consulting jobs, finance jobs, and, basically any rich job you can think about in New York and Boston, that's kind of a thing that you can do with like a degree from Williams. But to be honest with you, that didn't seem all that interesting to me. There were some nice opportunities, I'm not going to lie. There, when you look at the potential contracts and you look at the numbers, you're like, I didn't know that salaries came in this number of figures. This is actually pretty nice. But it didn't seem all that attractive to me because at that same time while I was doing that, triple major, I had a nice opportunity to do some social work in a sense because the pandemic had just ended. I mean, was in the process of ending, however you want to define it. And the thing that happened at Williams, and I think in most of the world, was you kind of lost a sense of community.
Oh, yeah.
And a cool opportunity that I had was because I was a residential director at Williams, which just basically means, it's not like here you have like, residential life is, it's kind of affiliated with the university, but it's not necessarily monitored by the university. You have, your own apartments and whatever, in a sense, like Soitu or whatever. But at Williams, it was a residential campus, which means like everybody, those standard American dorms, the way you imagine.
Yeah.
And I was responsible for a quadrant of that campus. And I was really passionate about trying to organize events, basically, just to like, okay, let's get faculty, staff, and students just to talk with each other. And I organized like these .cm dinners, organized some like career oriented stuff, and just what did I have? I had a team of 7 house coordinators. So it was basically like you're kind of like what people do at JYU here. That's kind of the stuff that I did, but with like more just like students running it kind of like more directly. And I really enjoy that type of work. I like that type of work where I'm in the field, I can identify a problem that's like directly impacting somebody, and I can try to figure out some sort of a solution. And I wanted to do something like that, but I didn't really find anything like that in the States. And there were a couple of opportunities to teach and whatever. And then at some point I was just like, okay, let's also look into Europe. And I was looking into a couple of countries. Finland wasn't the first one. I'll be honest with that. I always say,
it is not the most obvious choice in Europe. That's true.
Oh, absolutely not. Which is kind of a shame, to be honest with you, because when you compare it with everything else, it's probably one of the better options. So I gotta, give credit where credit is due. I gotta give the credit to my brother, because when I was starting to apply to do some programs in Europe, my first idea was Germany, just because I speak
One of
German.
the most obvious, choices.
Yeah. And they have like a pretty decent program when it comes to foreigners coming in and being funded for master's degree programs and PhD programs. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll apply to Germany. I did the UK, Austria, Denmark. I was thinking Sweden. And then at some point, my brother was like, why don't you apply to Finland as well? And I was like, I don't really know much about Finland other than Helsinki is a city in Finland, the capital city now, as I've been told. And he was like, yo, no, the people that I worked with from Finland were probably the coolest people that I've ever worked with. You should apply to Finland. And then I looked into all the Finnish universities, and I thought about mathematics and physics, and I technically applied to both. And at that point, I really looked into the math department here. They had a master's in mathematics at the time, so this is 2022 when I'm applying. And what was really cool was I could see the professor who were teaching the classes, and I could see their lecture notes. And I realized, oh, these people are actually writing their lecture notes. So Stefan and Hanna Geis, I looked particularly in their lecture notes in stochastics, and I was like, this is written in a beautiful way. I would love to take a class with these people. And that's kind of like what got me like, okay, let's actually apply into this. And, you have a lot of people who like discover the city and they're, oh my God, it's a beautiful city and whatever. I wasn't one of those people. I was like, okay, I mean, to be fair, I did look at the pictures. Everybody does. You don't want to live in an ugly place. And I was like, oh, this is really pretty. But the main decision is, oh, the campus looks very pretty. I'm going to go here. But it was really when I saw like, oh, this is a level of academic rigor that I feel like I would really enjoy. And that was kind of the moment when it clicked in my head, like, okay, I'm actually going to apply here and we'll see what's going to happen.
Interesting. So was it so that you applied into several European countries, or it was right away Finland when you realized that, okay, this is interesting?
Oh, no, I applied to a bunch of places already. I'd sent applications to the UK, which, funnily enough, I never got a rejection or acceptance from the United Kingdom. So to this day, I don't know if I got into Cambridge or Oxford or if I did. So that's kind of a funny thing. Which is also really funny. I had a professor in undergrad who said that like he never got a rejection from MIT. So his joke is, I'm just waiting for the day, 20 years later, they're going to send in the acceptance. Yeah, no, but I had already applied to Germany, the UK, Denmark at that time, and yeah, those were the places that I had already applied to at that point before discovering Finland. And then when I discovered Finland, I also applied there.
And did you get accepted to any other country?
Yeah. So like I got accepted to the program that I wanted to do in Germany, got accepted in Denmark, and the rest I honestly can't remember enough because.
And you still chose Finland.
Yeah.
This is interesting.
So I always say like the reason why I chose it, and I'm assuming that's what you're going for right now. See, I've been in that chair. I know. I
know the tricks.
I know some of the tricks. You've learned well.
Thank you.
So honestly, I'll be honest with you. I decided on JYU even before I officially got accepted.
Oh, seriously?
Because so I was accepted to some other places before I actually got accepted to JYU. I think Germany came in first, and it was kind of like it seemed like the most logical thing for me to do, to be honest with you. Speaks German fluently, could probably get German citizenship relatively quickly. There are so many people from the former Yugoslavia. They're relatively easy to integrate, yada, yada, yada. Program would have been interesting. But and this isn't like, I mean, no disrespect to Germany or their program or whatever. There was this, how do I say this? do you know when you email somebody and you just have a feeling like I'm trying to get through you as quickly as possible. I'm trying to get through this email as quickly as possible. That's kind of like
Sent from Outlook for iOS type of thing.
yeah, like let me process you as quickly as possible. That's kind of the sense that I got from like a lot of these programs. And then when I had the interview at JYU, like we got it done maybe in like half an hour or whatever. And then I just had some random questions about the lecture notes that I read from Stefan and Hanna. And they took the time to explain the stuff. They were like, yeah, no, was something that you can do in stochastic processes. It's Maths 254. It's offered in the second period. If you were to come here, these are kind of like the basic ideas. So let's see if you can think about this and like, doing a Socratic method with me during the interview. And I was just like, I'm not your student. And you're honestly taking more effort into teaching me this than like some of the professors that I have in undergrad right now. This is insane. And I got so hyped about potentially coming here after that interview. I was like, please, almighty,
Somebody.
some book, whatever. I really want to go here because if your attitude is like this in an interview, when objectively the stakes are pretty low, you're probably interviewing so many people, there isn't a reason for you to be like, I mean, it's nice if you're super invested into the people that you're talking to, but it's not the most imperative thing. And it just got me thinking, like, okay, how good would you guys be as actual educators if I'm in your classroom? How nice would that be? And I was honestly thrilled when I got it. I still remember. I remember to this day where I was when I got accepted. I was in this functional analysis course by Professor Mihai Stoicu. Cheers. He was a great guy. He is a great guy. Great guy. And I remember just getting the memo like, hey, congratulations, you've been accepted to JYU. I don't remember who sent it, but I think it was one of those generic admissions emails.
Yeah.
And I just thought to myself, okay, great. I'm heading over. I don't even remember reading the entire email properly. I was just like, you got accepted. Great. Where's the note about the visa and the residence permit, not the visa. Yeah, I was like, honestly, the second I got accepted to JYU, I didn't really have like a second thought, second opinion. And I can't give you like a fully rational answer to why. I mean, I guess two of them were just, I think, a huge part was just the way Stefan and Hanna were in the interview. Like that was probably a good 60% of it. A good chunk of it was just my brother's fascination with Finland. He was like, Finland, best country in the world. Go, 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 go. And then a part of it was just like, honestly, once I had that interview with Stefan and Hanna, I started researching the society a little bit more. And I thought to myself, this is a society I would genuinely enjoy. And I have.
Okay, this is great. So it kind of like leads back to our discussion that we had back in June that people are everything. Pretty much like the fact that you met good people during your interview brought you to Finland. This is insane if you think about it.
No, I mean it's exactly this human aspect. I'm a strong believer in that because sure, there is a time and place for written stories and whatever, but the experience that you have from a conversation with somebody, that's something that you're gonna remember. Maybe taking it somewhere a little bit else. Once I got accepted and I was going through the process of coming to Finland and whatever, a big chunk of me getting more excited about coming here were the following experiences that I had with people related to Finland. I had a lovely experience with the Embassy of Finland in Croatia, Zagreb. They were super nice, super professional, and honestly the most pleasant embassy experience I've ever had in my life. I know sometimes people complain about like their embassy experience in Finland, and my comment to that is always, my question is always, how many embassies have you visited? None. Okay, so you don't have a metric. I've been to enough embassies to know the Finnish one is lovely because you actually feel like you're being treated like a genuine human being.
Yeah, that's in general, like, I think, talking about Finland, you feel like a human being here quite often.
I think it is like, I think it's part of, I think it's cultural maybe, and this is, not a historian or anything, but I think it's part of this cultural understanding that after, the Second World War and everything, the way, I think what they realized in Finland is the capital that they have, because, Finland doesn't have oil, it doesn't have gold or whatever, it doesn't have those like insane natural resources, but the capital that it does have, it's the people. And I think they, a lot of the time, transition that into their international approach and work because they understand that, the greatest resource you could have are people. and you're going to treat everybody with dignity because A, that's the way you want to be treated, and it's also just the right thing to do. And I think it's also like a little bit of the law structure. I had kind of a funny experience the other day. I was at the doctor's office for something, and I like to crack jokes, as you might have noticed. And I said something to the doctor. I was like, "Oh, you're being like super nice and professional. I really appreciate it." Um, and we were rambling about something. And then I said like, "Oh yeah, you can't act like Doctor House." And he looks at me and said, "I mean, definitely not, because I don't think it's it's not the right thing to do as a human being, but also." We have laws here, we're pretty strict with our laws. There are like propositions, how you're supposed to treat your patients, how you're supposed to do certain things. And that's, I think, the big thing, people follow stuff to the letter of the law here because people actually worked on constructing a society that works for the people living here.
Yeah.
And then when you're coming into this society, doesn't matter who you are, the law still applies to you. So the benefits of the society, you're going to get them regardless of who you are because the law is ingrained within the benefits of the society.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. But talking about coming to Finland, obviously, prior to coming here, you had some expectations. You've been quite hyped up because of all the things that you've been hearing or what you researched or reading about Finland being the happiest country for God knows how many years in a row. Which of these expectations turned out to be true and which of them were completely wrong?
That's actually kind of a good question.
Oh, thank you.
I felt the dose of pain there. Really just kind of good question. Wasn't it a great question?
Exactly.
It was an...
I put my efforts and my entire heart in it.
Loistava kysymys. Loistava kysymys.
Kiitos.
I learned that word from a friend. I need to admit that. So here's kind of like a little bit of a paradox. I was learning stuff about Finland, but more from like, not from my own sources. I'll be honest with you. I did maybe Google some like very minimalistic stuff. Like I Googled dumb stuff. I mean, that some people might consider dumb. I Googled what's the average temperature in Jyväskylä.
That makes sense if you are coming from the southern country.
Yeah, but that was the relevant.
What's the average temperature, by the way? Do you remember?
Oh, in here?
Uh-huh.
I have absolutely no clue, but I love the weather here. I know it sounds like I know.
Yeah, but I would guess it is around like plus 10 as an average.
Yeah, for the year I think maybe 10, 12. But I mean that's also like that average gets a little bit tricky. But I think what is it like, June for September, I think the average is probably like 20, 22 degrees this year.
Well, this year I would say 20, but...
Okay, but this year was dramatic. We had that insane winter at minus 40 degrees, which was actually a lot of fun. I looked like, Santa Claus when I had like this longer beard that would just get, like...
Was it the first time for you to experience something like that?
Actually, no. I didn't have the worst winter of my life in Finland. The worst winter of my life was in Williamstown.
Okay.
It was December 2020. And we had this like ridiculously high snow. The entire campus was empty, and going to the dining hall was like you're climbing Mount Everest. It was that was a rough winter. This winter, oh my god, this is like
here they clean roads very fast.
They're amazing with it. That actually really surprised me. Like so I'm from a city that hosted the Olympics in '84, Winter Olympics, and you would assume that like a city that has hosted the Winter Olympics actually knows something about snow and how to remove stuff. Snow could be falling for months and it's still gonna be there in the streets. So I was always expecting like, okay, maybe that's just like a side effect of difficult roads and whatever. Jeez, snow starts falling. There's already somebody. The city is sending like, okay, guys, we're covering this. Put the rocks there. Which though the rocks were funny. I was expecting salt. You know how they put the rocks so it's not slippery.
It's much better for your shoes.
Yeah, but it's not that great when you, hypothetically speaking, trip on it before an exam and then you rip your jeans.
Oi.
Not a personal experience, allegedly.
Yeah, it is not very nice if you end up falling because like you can cut your arms or knees if you fall in an unfortunate way.
Allegedly. That's why we have health insurance. But to answer your question, like what were the stereotypes that ended up being true and that didn't? To be honest with you, I wasn't really thinking about it. I wouldn't know how to give you the answer. Like I don't even...
Not stereotypes, I must correct you. Expectations.
Expectations, sorry. Okay, I'll be honest with you. My expectations were like, I mean, I was hyped, but also my expectations were ridiculously low.
That's the smartest way.
Like, but that is a consequence of previous experience, because my expectations for the States were insanely high. And again, I mean no disrespect to my previous institution, but maybe I had too high expectations. Maybe at times I didn't, and the delivery wasn't the greatest. But anyway, but no, I mean, honestly, my expectations were insanely low. They were on the level of literally treat me as a human being. Treat me as a human being.
That's
That was.
a high expectation.
I don't think it is. I don't think that should be a high expectation. That's like.
Should
Yeah.
and is two different things.
Yeah. Hey, we are in a society.
Okay.
But yeah, honestly, I was really pleasantly surprised by a lot of stuff. To me, the first like big refreshing thing was, because when I was still in undergrad, it was still kind of like this COVID vibe, and everybody was still kind of distancing themselves, the masks and whatever, yada yada yada. So it was really pleasant for me to just come here and be like, oh my god, I can actually sit in a lecture hall. I can sit in a lecture and have somebody sit next.
People.
It was so nice. It was honestly like so refreshing, and maybe like maybe the one mistake where I made with the expectation, and I'm probably gonna get in trouble for saying this, but we tried to be honest on this show. I had a really high expectation for the Finnish language education. That was like and Alina's already like, oh my god, you're gonna go there. Yes, I will. I had this like super duper high mega expectation of Finnish language education, and that was maybe the mistake that I made. The idea of like, oh, I'm gonna walk into this classroom and after 4 months, I'm gonna speak fluent Finnish.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, that was a horrible expectation. That was my mistake. So you gotta level with yourself there. So the piece of advice that I would give to myself, if I could send myself a letter, was like, yeah, don't have high hopes. Not because of necessarily the structure of the class, despite the fact that I do think certain things should be restructured better. But anyway, and I feel comfortable saying that just because I know
there is always a room for improvement.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I feel comfortable saying that because the joke is, you can remind somebody about the truth, but somebody who believes a lie, you should never tell them the truth because they're not going to understand you. I think a good thing here is that people do take input. They're constantly kind of like reiterating stuff. They take feedback into account and they try to do things better, which is part of education. If you're not willing to take critical feedback, then you're in the wrong field.
Definitely.
But yeah, maybe that was the only like I guess expectation that I said that was perhaps a little bit unrealistic. Now the adjusted expectation would be I still think it's not a difficult language, but finding the right approach to learning it is the difficult thing.
It is, and also another thing that makes it very hard to start using the language is the fact that everybody speaks English here, and majority of Finns tend to switch to English whenever they hear that you are not a native speaker. So that also, because if you go to some country that has zero English speakers outside of a small community where you study, for example, you are forced to learn it. For example, I'm thinking about, I do not know, Asian countries, for instance. You kind of really need to start to grasp the language.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of like one of the privileges that you get whenever you're going to any Nordic country, and I think Finland quotes like the highest out of the Nordic. Like somebody would have to fact check me on this.
I do not have the stats, but it is quite high. I'm pretty sure.
I mean, just like the lived experience. Like, how many times have you met somebody who doesn't understand you in English unless they're maybe like
they for some reason all work in hospitals. I always have to speak Finnish whenever I call hospital.
But I think that might also just be like, okay, like I really want to make sure that I'm understanding your issue as properly as possible.
Yeah.
But I've had a similar experience. Though I guess there's always that social service that like if somebody doesn't speak it, they can get you a translator on the line and like connect it and whatever. So like 9 out of 10, you can explain it enough even. But like, I mean, if I can manage to explain my issue with my butchered Finnish, everybody can.
Yeah.
I apologize for every time how I pronounce the language. See, that's why I'm really trying to learn how to properly pronounce the name of the city. Like I figure that it's kind of funny every time I start off the podcast. I make a slight mistake, so I really want to Jyväskylä.
Jyväskylä.
Yeah, I've been told like I did the lips a little bit too wide. You really want to like do?
Oh, you go very deep with that.
I go into the smile. See, I'm just really happy to be here. It's like Jyväskylä. Yeah.
Expectations. That's it tends to be like one of the main topics we discussed when we end up together.
But I think it's also, I mean, I do really think it's the most important thing. I think it's always and I think I've said this like on so many episodes of the podcast and like in life in general, expectations are important in anything. I mean, like if you're in a relationship,
Yeah.
if you want to have like appropriate expectations, because issues arise when expectations are not met.
Absolutely.
So-
That's true.
So adjust them appropriately. That's why my recommendation for everybody in a relationship is make sure that the expectations are low as humanly possible. Good morning and good night.
I would say that it applies to absolutely every aspect of life. But my next question was how a typical international student of University of Jyväskylä end up being a host of a podcast
Oh.
that is done for the University of Jyväskylä.
Okay. So let's start off here. Let me give you the full story. So it was May 2023. I believe it was a sunny day. I think it was somebody's birthday. We were going to the student restaurant called Uno. I think we were having some of this coconut chicken. Anyway, no. So there's this position at the university called a student ambassador, international student ambassadors, and you also have local Finnish student ambassadors. And I saw the ad for the job in like maybe April, May. And I thought to myself, I want to apply to this. Not because it's a job, because it's paid or whatever. I was genuinely, I like this place. I've enjoyed this place, and I wish I knew it existed when I was in high school. Because if I had known about the University of Jyväskylä when I was 14, I would have paid anybody. I would have figured out how to learn Finnish from age 14 to 18 so I could come here and do a bachelor's. Because that's genuinely how impressed I was with the university. Of course, from my own field. So I'm talking about physics and, mathematics. I can't comment on about anybody else's field. That's why we have other people come to the podcast. And I thought to myself, like, okay, is there anything valuable that I can offer? And I thought some of the life experience that I have is like I've done a lot of public speaking. I've done a lot of promoting stuff to different people. And I always say like I can probably pitch you and sell you any idea. It might just take a little bit of time, and at times I might have to resort to cheap tricks like saying AI like 20 times. But anyway, I saw the job posting, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to apply. And I applied as the most real, like, I applied really like myself. Because, you try to adjust yourself a little bit for a job posting and blah, 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 blah. I was like, nah, if I do this job, you have to understand who you're dealing with. Because I don't want to, because...
This is what you get.
Exactly. So I sent in the application, and Heli, who's my supervisor right now...
Let me try to fix my hair. This goes to bloopers.
No, we're including this in the episode.
Well, I am clumsy and I'm not even trying to hide it. Like this is what you get when you get me as a host of the podcast. You're welcome.
I think you want to move the microphone a little bit closer to you. Okay.
Hello.
Moro.
Okay, are we good?
Yeah,
continue.
I think we're fine. So I think the funny thing that happens every time I do like this podcast with a friend is there's always like some sort of like a funny technical thing. So right now the technical malfunction was that one of Alina's hairs on the head moved like a little bit, under 27 degrees, so she really had to readjust.
Haha, so funny you are.
Don't worry, we're gonna remove this part actually.
No, I think it is funny. You
okay.
can leave.
No, but like last time, so when I...
Does it look good now?
This is a dangerous question.
Come on, damn you.
Say it in the comments. We can like, share, and subscribe.
Like, do you like the way my hair looks? Tell us. Okay, let's get back to the...
See, this is why you're not the permanent host. I'm kidding. I'm like borderline bald, so I don't have these problems. Anyway, but the funny thing is kind of like every time I do like this, more relaxed podcast with like a friend, there's always some sort of like a dumb technical thing that happens. Last time I did it with like Lucas from Germany. This was episode 6. The lights just went out at some point.
Really?
That was so funny. There's always like a little technical thing. I mean, I think with the lights, the deal is that because we're doing this in the library and all the lights automatically
turn
off.
Were you recording like super late in the evening?
Yeah. Maybe
Okay.
like around, Actually, not super late. We were recording it at the same time we're recording it today, so the lights might come
You
out.
never know. Okay, I see.
Yeah, it's the Valometki thing. But no, I think I was talking about applying to the student ambassador job. Yeah. So I sent in the application, and then maybe like an hour after I sent in the application, I got an email response back from Heli, who's my supervisor nowadays. And she was just like, hey, read your application. Would these times work for an interview? And I was like, yeah, sure, this one works. And the interview was like, I don't remember exactly when. And I go into the interview, and it was Heli, who at the time was the supervisor and still is for the international student ambassadors. And I think it was Mirva Sepala. She was also there. She was at the time the what is the word? The supervisor for the Finnish side of the international.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Finnish side of international.
Yeah, long day. Well, how does Kari say it? Rankka viikkoja, paljon pitkiä päiviä. Anyway, so yeah, she was the supervisor for the Finnish side of the ambassadors. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest with you, whenever I see like, because this is just my perspective, communications offices, I don't have high expectations, which I guess is a good thing and a bad thing. And I go into this interview and I had a lovely conversation with both of them, and I left it thinking like, oh, these people are genuinely awesome. I would love to work with these people. And then I got an email from Heli sometime later, and in that interview, I think, and Heli can correct me on this later, I can add a disclaimer. I think I mentioned that like I would really want to do long form content at the university, because I think there's a time and a place for everything. The short form content is great if you want to go viral, if you want to get like a little glimpse of attention, and all of our brains nowadays function in like
30 seconds.
Exactly. But if you want to get a little bit of deeper information, it's kind of tricky. You can read a lot of stuff about the university, but personally for me, like my attention span for reading is horrible. Like I don't know what's wrong with like today's society, but like our attention spans, I believe, function between if it's under 30 seconds and if it's like longer than an hour, or sometimes if it's between 30 and 60 minutes. So I really wanted to do that type of not personal content, I guess, maybe this individual content, because I think the strength of this entire city is the people are just plain normal that you get to meet. And I think it's a good opportunity to get to see the perspective of, who are the people that you're going to bump into in this city, at this university.
Because with whom you're going to collaborate and all this kind of stuff.
Exactly.
It's true.
And I also thought about it a little bit, my previous experience when I was going for undergraduate studies. I saw a lot of videos. And all of them were like, between, at the time, when I was applying for undergrad, it was 2017, so TikTok still wasn't a big thing. So the videos were, 2 to 5 minutes. And you can convince anybody that something is great in 2 to 5 minutes. You can convince anybody. But the more time you give somebody, you get a more realistic picture.
That's true.
And I've realized with time, all the 2 to 5 minute videos of JYU, and I genuinely mean this, I'm not saying this because, I work as an international student ambassador. I think they're an accurate portrayal. They are an accurate portrayal of the university. But I can tell you that after being here, I can tell you, yeah, no, this is legit. The things that you see in the short form content, they're legit. But if you're coming from abroad, you don't know that it's legit. So if you have like this question in your head of like, okay, can I hear the bigger picture? Can I hear the longer story? Can I see how these people interact with each other? That's what I thought, like, okay, there's space for this podcast. So that was kind of the idea. And I pitched it, May 2023. And then after a year of working as an ambassador, we did like a pilot episode in February or March, I think. Belle and I did it. Though beforehand, I got to also give a shout out to Ella, who helped me out, actually learn how to work the studio. And I got to say, like the biggest supporter with getting the podcast off the ground was definitely my supervisor, Heli, because she was the one who genuinely believed in the project to an extent that, like, honestly, I told Heli this like earlier today. I'm not used to people actually appreciating my work. So that's something also that I've learned to really enjoy here, both, as an international student ambassador and also as when I was a research trainee in summer 2023 in math and physics. It was kind of like this, oh, you guys actually appreciate my work. I haven't experienced this in a while, so thank you for that. And yeah, so then we started off the podcast in, I think the first episode was June 2024. June 2024 was the first episode.
That's great. And actually, like about people, you being not used to people appreciating your work, I think that JYU for you, or is it you for you, by the way?
JYU for you,
Yeah,
JYU for you,
yeah,
JYU for you.
makes the difference. I really think that we needed this type of content that opens up people who are either working at the university or who are students at the university or that who are people that influence the life at the university. For example, you did a podcast with the mayor of the city. I think this is cool. So kudos to you.
Oh,
Great
thank you.
job. And like it always requires one very enthusiastic person to like, you know, have this sparkle to do something great. So
No, thank
yeah.
you. I genuinely appreciate you saying that. Not just because like you were one of the former guests and it was a lovely experience doing the episode with you, but also like you have a background in marketing, so it's kind of like I take a little bit of extra pride in that. But also I do think with these types of things you always need a little bit of a rebel is not the best word, but it's a word about this. Somebody who's willing to like change something around and like take a risk and notice a trend and a perspective.
Take initiative.
And I think that's kind of like where Heli and I had like a good communication and understanding with each other of like, okay, we see the space
Mm-hmm.
and I think there's value in it. And I think at the moment, there are a couple of other universities that are trying to do a similar thing. And I'm way above saying like, oh, theirs is bad. Check out the other universities' podcast as well. It's always an interesting thing just, to learn more. But I think what we're really trying to do, or I guess Heli and myself, because it really is on some level. It's I always say it's like a 2-team show. This is like the entire podcast is basically just us. And today you're co-hosting and you're a guest, so thank you for that. You're gonna get a chocolate afterwards.
Oh, thank you.
Two chocolates. I think free. We shall decide if they have like free for €5. Then it's
Okay,
then
the
it's
ones
that
that
option.
they sell in kiosk.
Hey, I have enough respect for you to not get you an Alkasket.
Thank you.
You're gonna get the Mestarin Herku ones, whatever they have at Mestarin Herku.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I think we just like noticed at some point, there is a desire for this, and I've received some really nice commentary, and I appreciate that. And it's a good opportunity to meet some pretty cool people and have some good conversations, and see this different perspective. And I genuinely enjoyed every episode that I did so far with everybody. Bells was a lot of fun as the first one because it was both of us were student ambassadors, and we had like a lot of fun doing Applicants Day, which is something you guys should definitely look into and register for it. I'll leave a link in the description.
I think it's in October, is it?
Yeah, it's in
3rd of October?
October 11th. Actually, wait, I think depending on when this episode is released, Applicants Day might have passed. So like,
Next year, guys. Next year.
whenever Applicants Day is happening. But if it's not happening right now, check out our website. But yeah, it was a lot of fun with Belle. Ella was also really nice to have on the podcast just because we tutored together, and she helped me out a lot. When I was practicing just learning how to work the studio. And there was also Teo from Digital Services who originally helped out a lot with just me learning how to operate stuff in the studio. You were episode 3. And you just had like a lot of great insights about actually getting a job in Finland. And I think that's one important thing where I don't want to take away anybody's food, but the media gets a little bit, I think, too antsy with commentary about like, oh, it's impossible to find a job in Finland. Yeah, it's difficult to find a job in any country nowadays. Even if you're a native in any country, unemployment is going up pretty much everywhere. It's difficult.
Yeah.
And of course, when you come into a new country, it's going to be a little bit tricky to find a job. And the way you counter that is, well, increase the chances of finding a job, which is kind of exactly your story. Get a university degree, do something proactive, make yourself useful, get a PhD. So there are these options. Henna was a fun episode to do with just because like it was so interesting to have a conversation with somebody about physics after a long time. Venla from the student union, I actually got to learn something about like what the student union does, and I never had like I had like a very negative opinion about the student union, and I'm kind of ashamed to say that just because every other experience with student unions that I've had before JYU was just a bunch of like kids that want to be politicians but they're not clever enough to be politicians. And a lot of people that I met from the student union here, they're genuinely passionate about trying to do something useful. Sometimes they succeed, sometimes they don't, but I think it's like this big, it's a toot. It's a thought that counts. And then Lucas was just like a lot of fun to have on because we met each other in 2022 when both of us came to JYU, him as an exchange student and me as international degrees in the mathematics. So it was fun to reflect on a previous story, and also it's really cool to see his perspective because he keeps coming back here during the summers to do the summer school. So you feel like, okay, there is like, it's exactly that like personal people related impact that the university has. And then episode 7 was Timo, the mayor of the city, and he was lovely. I gotta give Timo props. He was such a chill and normal guy to talk to. And I think he's one of those people, not just, even if you're not interested about coming to Jyväskylä, I think it's just fascinating to watch that episode to see, like, this is he doesn't like to call himself a politician. He says he's a civil servant, and I really appreciate that, distinction.
That's a very nice way to put it.
It shows to me that, like, you don't have this opinion of, because,
There's no crown.
I mean, we're both from countries where, politicians have a little bit of a high opinion of themselves.
That's true.
Which might be a euphemism. But this was just like, a normal man who came to discuss things that he found
Very
important.
approachable. Yes, nice.
He's such an approachable guy. And in general, with the entire city, I have to give props to the entire city of Jyväskylä. It was really nice to cooperate with him on this, because one of the difficult things when you do work like this is scheduling the studio, yada, yada, yada. With the city of Jyväskylä, I was just like, hey, I would love to interview Timo. Like a couple of hours later, I get an email from his assistant. She's like, hey, would these times work for you? I'm like, absolutely. Do you want to like meet up with Timo beforehand to chat a little bit? That'd be great. Perfect. It's in the calendar. I'm like, wow. Literally. And then people complain of bureaucracy. I'm like, this is awesome. But I think it also shows like the city's mentality of like, it's important to reach students. And then I had like somebody from your area, Juha Kansikas, he's episode 8, who talked about the bachelor's degree program in business innovation and sustainability. And that was kind of like, I'll be honest with you, that was a pet project of mine to have him on the podcast, because I genuinely think that bachelor's degree program is a golden opportunity. And I want people to hear about it just because I would have wanted to do a bachelor's in English in Finland. I really wish I could have done it. Maybe I'll also apply to that.
Well, that would be quite an interesting experience.
That'd be hilarious.
Well, you never know. Maybe you will at some point decide that you are not a mathematician or physicist and you want to do game design. And then you go for bachelor's in game design.
Why game design out of all things?
I do not know. It just appeared in my mind. I don't know. Maybe you want to do a well-being management bachelor degree. Okay. That also exists in Finland.
I love these random degrees that you're going with. Is there a degree?
I did the research for JYU on all the bachelor degrees in Finland. That's why I have very random knowledge about
Wait, why did you do that research? I mean, I know you're
because when JSB, the School of Business and Economics, that is still supposed to be, I am interviewing you, not other way around, but whatever. JSB wanted to know what is the field about, what are the different bachelor degree programs, international bachelor degree programs that are offered in Finland, so that JYU can offer something unique, useful, and not similar to majority of other universities. And this is how this program that is now starting in January 2025, the application period is starting. So this is how it was born.
Okay. So you were involved with like business innovation and sustainability?
No,
like,
I wasn't.
Indirectly.
I just did the initial data gathering.
Got it. So you kind of like did the benchmarking for the university. Yeah. Oh, that's actually clever. Okay.
Yeah, and university does a lot of this type of stuff, and it offers these opportunities to proactive students. This is great, I think.
Hey, buddy, add that to your LinkedIn.
It is there.
I guess I didn't research your LinkedIn. I prepare for my podcast guests. Yeah, did you read my thesis?
No, unfortunately, but I have no idea about math whatsoever, because even though I did advanced math in high school, I can't remember anything after 8 years.
I mean, to be honest with you, like this one probably, this is stochastics in any case, so like, it's a little bit. But I did write it in a way that like if somebody has taken, calculus, they could get it.
Okay. That was but for that you need to remember calculus.
Yeah, fair enough. But also, I mean, to be honest with you, like I'm trying to remember right now what was the title of my thesis. On exact simulations of first hitting times of solutions of stochastic differential equations. I think that was the name.
This is like just a bunch of words for me. I must be honest, and I truly appreciate people who can do this stuff like that.
Oh, I'll be honest with you. I would say about myself, I don't think I'm clever enough to do that type of stuff. I am lucky in the sense that I've had good mentors most of my life. Most of my life, yeah. I had a lovely thesis advisor who probably went through a little bit of a difficult thing with me because halfway through I kind of changed my mind on my thesis topic, which happens, I guess.
It happens to everyone. Like my thesis topic changed like multiple times.
Yeah, but did it change like, in January?
No.
Yeah, mine changed in January.
Well, you like to live your life risky.
Yeah, I'm still amazed by the fact that I actually got it done like 8 weeks, I think. 12? 8? 12?
Crazy.
Something like
Crazy.
But it was like it kind of showed me in a sense that like, okay, my the base the foundations that you gave me through the master's degree program were good enough that I could make a conceptual switch in the thesis and actually still do a thesis properly.
Yeah, that's true. If you know what you're talking about and what you're doing, thesis is not as painful as people usually picture it.
I do think like most people get their thesis done in like the last minute. That's kind of the sense that I
Really?
get with thesis. Yeah. Okay, maybe you're the structured person. See, that's why you're doing a PhD and I'm doing a second master's. I still haven't achieved that level of maturity.
Coming back to podcast, I had a very interesting thought because you said that you had a lot of good, cool conversations. What were the most like insightful, interesting things that you picked up from talking to such a different crowd of people?
Let me think about it.
Yeah, I should have sent the questions in advance.
Hey, I don't send you guys questions in advance, so it wouldn't be fair. Granted, I do have like an hour-long conversation with everybody beforehand, so you guys get some prep. So first of all, let's just emphasize that this is like the first 8 episodes because there's a special episode number 9, and this is probably going to be episode number 10 or episode number 1 of season 2, depending on how we decide to number everything. So kind of like as a generalization, everybody's commentary on the importance of community. So one thing that kind of like immediately came up to my mind was Henna, who has done some pretty cool things in physics, mentioned how important community in the physics department was to her. Like, how did she describe? I think she even like referred to it as like everybody's close with each other. It's almost like a little family, and everybody kind of had like a similar vibe that they were mentioning about it. The sense of how you can feel internationalization at the university, which I always have like this mixed feeling about that word. I kind of hate that word because I feel like I think we had this conversation about like, international blah, blah program, to make it a little bit more peppy. So that's why I have an issue with the word internationalization. But in this context, having a more global contact and more global perspective, everybody kind of mentioned that a little bit, in their own departments. And this desire for innovation, I guess, like this ability to recognize certain issues both in town and at the university, or maybe not even issues, maybe like opportunities for growth and how to act upon them. Like, for example, when I had Juha talk about business innovation and sustainability, I loved his entire perspective of, we're very excited for the program to happen. Is it possible that there might be some issues? Yeah, but it's, we're constantly iterating. It's R&D constantly trying to make it work. Similar thing when Timo came on podcast and was talking about, like, sure, we are perfectly aware of the fact that it's kind of difficult for students and foreigners to get a job in Finland and in Jyväskylä, but we're trying to do these things to make it work, to make it a little bit better. And I appreciate that self-awareness of, yeah, some things could be done better. We're working on them. And I think that kind of like, so I guess at that level of proactivity, it's kind of difficult to get like a simple generalization when I think about it a little bit better, just because, there's a range of guests. Because I tried to have
super different.
Yeah, I mean, like, one day you have the mayor of the city, the other day you have a buddy. Which, I mean, on some level, the vibe was kind of similar. The vibe was kind of similar. I really got to say, man, like, I'm praising Timo maybe a little bit too much right now. I don't think he'd mind. But it was so lovely just to have a conversation with him because it really felt like you're talking to like a normal person. And my experience in life has been like, and I'm going to get in trouble for this. I met a lot of politicians in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the time I feel there's a persona here and it takes a lot of time to kind of like rip off that persona and get to the point where you're talking to the human being. With Timo, I just felt like, okay, I'm talking to a human being. immediately. And I don't know, is this like just his personal quality and character? Could it be like just, a school of thought in Finland? Is it an effective Finnish society and whatever? And that's something that I really enjoyed. Actually, quite frankly, when I think about it, everybody that I talked to, we're going back, that full circle right now. That human perspective, that human element, that's something that I really appreciated.
Yeah, people are our greatest treasure, and like social connections are important for absolutely everything you do. That's like something that's the hill I'm willing to die on, as they say. Yeah, how do you see the development of the podcast?
Well, so in what sense do you mean?
Any, whatever comes into your mind. Like, what is this? Let's talk about goals type of thing here. Like, what is your vision with this podcast? What purpose should it serve, and how you plan to like help it, help to achieve this purpose? Because I assume that you will not be hosting it forever, but I hope that JYU for you stays as a part of JYU's communications. So from your point of view, from your perspectives, and from your standpoint at the moment, what are your short-term goals for the podcast?
Okay, so let's start off with this. Actually, first note, as the editor of the podcast, move that microphone a little bit closer to you.
Hello.
Hello. So kind of like maybe I guess my perspective with the podcast is I'm scheduled to keep hosting it, I believe, till May or June or whenever we start getting like the new cohort of the student ambassadors. On a personal note, I would love to keep hosting this till I'm very old and wrinkly and two feet going towards a deep hole in the ground. Because I think it's a meaningful thing, and you get to meet like a lot of cool people and have some cool conversations. Let me give you a little bit of a long-term vision, then we're going to go into the short-term vision. Long-term, I would love the podcast to expand, to have this opportunity to have conversations with researchers about their own professional experiences, because there are some amazing researchers here that
Definitely.
cover so many different things. That's something I would love to do. Unfortunately, time-wise, it takes a lot of effort to create these episodes, like a lot more than people think. So reading somebody's research would be a little bit tricky, but my hope is that at some point, be it me here in 10 years or be it somebody else, there's going to be that opportunity that there's a system, like, hey, we can interview this researcher, we can really showcase somebody's research or somebody who has time to do all this and whatever. In the short term, and I'm going to give you the most trivial answer possible, the goal is to have good conversations. The goal is to have good and meaningful conversations that hopefully offer some level of value, because I'd feel bad for somebody. There is always an entertainment factor that at least I try to give a little bit to the episode, but I would always feel bad for somebody if, time is finite. Time is definitely finite. And I'd feel really bad for somebody, who tunes into the episode and is like, wow, well, that's an hour that I'm never going to get back. Just like that debate between the two presidential candidates in the States. Why did I watch that? That's an hour I'm never going to get back. And I wouldn't want anybody to feel like, oh, God, I just watched, a presidential debate. I didn't hear anything substantial out of it. I would want to, I guess I have, because the way I kind of envision the podcast is it should be able to reach multiple different groups. I would want it to reach potential students who can watch the episode and think to themselves, oh, this is an environment where I could actually thrive, where I could, make my life, do something meaningful out of it. And I would also want it to serve the university community, because there are, certain aspects of the community that you might not know about, you might not learn about it, and you can learn some cool things that are happening at the university. There was one, for example, I had a conversation with somebody who randomly learned about the podcast, and they told me that they watched the episode with Henna. And they were like, oh, I had no idea that, we have an accelerator lab. And they're like, we do some pretty serious nuclear physics at JYU. And I was like, oh, that's kind of funny that you didn't know that. And you learn these more things about the university. So that's kind of for the local environment. I would also want it to, serve them. But yeah, I guess the short term is, try to get some interesting guests on that people might find fun. There are some guests that are definitely on my wish list that I would love to interview before, before I turn off the camera and stop editing the show. I will say though, the edits I'm kind of looking forward to having to do less edits maybe at some point in the future, because it takes a lot of time. The most fun part is
it does. Yeah.
Ever done long form video editing?
Yeah, I did.
What did you use?
First it was, oh God, I don't remember. What was it? First it was iMovie. At first, I was editing in iMovie. That was a nightmare. But then it was, gosh, I don't remember. You caught me off guard. It's something cut.
Oh, don't tell me you edited in CapCut.
No,
Okay.
something else. And yeah, back then it was mostly iMovie and something cut. But it was like a couple of years, like 5 or 6
Okay,
years
okay.
ago, so a long time ago.
DaVinci Resolve over here.
Yeah.
It's a lovely thing, but it's a lot of work. But I think it's worthwhile. To me, it's even if I get 5 people who say like, "Hey, this taught me something and it was valuable for me." I'm like, "Oh, that's cool."
That's amazing.
And I
That's
also
cool.
think like just structurally speaking with the podcast, and I even wrote this like because I at some point I wrote like an actual project proposal and whatever. I will be very surprised if the podcast on YouTube over the next year has more than 500 views on a single episode. I'll be very surprised if that happens. But I think if the university stays diligent with this and they continue expanding their marketing strategy to new markets, within 2 to 4 years, this could actually be like a pretty, respectable
Important
thing.
stores.
Yeah. And then maybe at that point, I can either look back and be like, oh, it was fun to participate in this, or they're going to disown me and forget that I was ever there. I'm kidding. It's like, I think this is, I was mentioning this to I mean, I mentioned this to you beforehand. It's, people appreciate your work here. And that's something that I kind of forgot what it's like. I mean, you even have that experience where you actually put in a little bit of effort into something. It's like, oh, here's some credits. Oh, this is actually kind of cool. Here's some money. Oh, this is kind of cool. And you can actually...
It motivates you to continue.
Oh, yeah, because you feel like there's a purpose. You feel like there's a purpose. I do need to make one disclaimer. There's a rumor going around that I make 2,000 euros per episode. That's... If that were true, I'd be making an episode a day. That is it's fake news. Fake news.
Yeah, misinformation all around us.
I love it how you're plugging your podcast. Your podcast. Oh my god, your
My
thesis
research
there.
topic. Yeah, because when you do a research on certain topic, you get absolutely hijacked by it. You see it everywhere.
Oh, I know. Wow. Hey, when I was doing my thesis, actually bachelor's thesis, there's this thing called Benford's Law that basically just said like, if you look at certain frequencies of things happening in like a large database, what's the probability of if you have like a huge database, okay? Let's say like you look at the populations of towns from all around the world, and you look at how often does the number 1 show up as the first digit of these populations. What do you think? What is the probability of like, number 1 showing up?
I will not even try to guess.
So most people guess it's like 10%, and then they remember like, oh, you can't start a population with 0. I mean, I guess you can, but like it wouldn't really list it if it's an unpopulated place. Ends up being 30%, roughly.
Okay.
Number 2 is like 18% or something like that. Number 3 is like 9% or whatever. It's kind of like a curve that goes down like this. And it's kind of a cool way to analyze data and check if there's like some voter fraud. It's massively using that. And also banks can double check using that. Like it's a really simple tool to like check if you should look a little bit more closely on the data set to see if some fraud is happening. And when I was doing that thesis, I had to do like some like unrelated to the thesis, some other work that I was doing. I had to look at a lot of data sets and every time, ooh, I wonder, is this Benford? Does it follow Benford? So it was like this.
Yeah, so you know how it feels.
Oh, yeah. Again, I guess that's why I'm not doing a PhD.
But the second master's. So you will get even more topics to be hijacked with.
Yeah. On one end, stochastics, and on another end, it's probably going to be applied nuclear physics. I'm not going to make a nuke, probably.
Who knows? Yeah.
Definitely not. We're not endorsing. I think Finland signed the nuclear non-proliferation treaty. So
that sounds like a lot of letters to me. I do not know what is that.
Oh, I think it's just
whatever.
Google it after the episode. Google it after.
I will ask ChatGPT. You have an opinion about AI?
I think AI is the most... I'm trying to figure out how to say this diplomatically, considering that we do have a program in artificial intelligence and high performance computing, I believe. I think the AI hype is so unreal. I think it's unwarranted. I think it's on the level of Bitcoin where everybody's super excited about it. I don't think it's really substantial. I'm not technically educated enough to give you actual decent arguments why I believe that. But there are people who are way more technically educated on the topics than I am who can give you that argument. I think it's something that you should learn. I do genuinely think that. And I I know it sounds like, oh, he's saying that because there's an artificial intelligence program. Well, maybe a little bit. I think you should learn it because it's kind of interesting to learn. But I don't think AI is gonna replace us.
No,
That's
obviously not.
ridiculous.
But it makes at the moment life easier.
I think at the moment I believe ChatGPT is on the like usefulness level of maybe Google 15 years ago when Google's algorithms were a lot better. I think it's on that level. Or if you're doing simple tasks, it's probably on the level of like Mathematica, Wolfram Alpha a couple of years ago. It does make some stuff a little bit easier, but it's like, for most tasks, if you know how to do them, it's going to save you like 10 to 15 seconds at best. Now, the flip side of the argument is like, okay, I didn't know how to do these things. I don't really need to learn how to do them. This is just going to give me the answer. And I can see the benefit in that. My fear always with artificial intelligence is kind of like, there are a lot of drawbacks that can happen with it, and I think if you don't treat it responsibly, you can end up in a lot of problems, especially with like all the deep fakes and everything that's going around. And actually, my former thesis advisor Steve sent this to me. They have this like I think Google made it like this AI that can read a paper and turn it into a podcast.
Okay.
And that was kind of terrifying. When I saw that, I was like, okay, in 5 years, I'm kind of worried where this is gonna be. Like, I might be out of a job. But so far, I still think it's kind of overhyped. I think it's overhyped. It has potential, but I think it's overhyped.
Yeah. I agree with like the danger of treating it irresponsibly, but for me, it saves like hours of work at the moment.
Okay, but in what? Like, what do you do with it?
Well, for instance, if I need to write a text, it takes a while. But if I feed all the prerequisites of the text to the ChatGPT, it gives me a draft that I can work with.
Okay.
And edit it. And instead of, let's say, 5 hours, I spend an hour on that text. Or it is writing my emails sometime. Because if I need to write a very long email and I'm not exactly in a good mood, and I do not want to become a passive-aggressive emailer, what I do is I feed all my thoughts to ChatGPT and say to write it in a more amiable manner, and it does the perfect job.
But see, what bugs me with like ChatGPT is I can tell when something was written with artificial intelligence, and that really bugs me.
Yeah, that's true, but sometimes you can just that when you as a human being should come in and fix the text.
Yeah, but for me, it just annoys me. I'm just like, oh my God, I would never write anything like this. Oh, and okay, that might be just a me flaw because I think I have a very specific voice of how I write stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I do definitely see the value of it sometimes. I mean, like, job applications, I think it's probably useful when you're polishing up your resume a little bit. You can probably use it to like beef up your KPIs just because, I mean, allegedly, some of the data that was used by ChatGPT and not ChatGPT necessarily artificial intelligence, allegedly they've used some data from all around, so they might know a little bit how to, which words to use and whatever. But I think it might boil down to at some point the calculator debate. Can you as a human do most things that a calculator can do? Yeah. Is it valuable to do them? Probably not, but should you still know how to do them? Yes. I think that's where we're getting lost.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of like, will your mental muscles atrophy? Because that's at some point, sure, you don't need to always know. You can use it to write an email. Absolutely. Hell, I mean, you could probably use it to write most of the stuff that I write by hand for the podcast. But sooner or later, you have to be able to do this verbally. And my concern is if you're not working that muscle enough and you're deferring it to artificial intelligence in a situation where you can rely on it, you'll be lost.
Yeah, it's your personal responsibility that must come in. Like, to what extent are you willing to give up your tasks to AI or any other assistant? It's the same type of thing with I don't know, having a personal assistant. Some people, I assume that some people who can afford personal assistant, they could have done all these things by themselves, but they just do not have time. This is similar type of thing. If you use it responsibly.
I mean, okay, I guess now we're getting into like, okay, what does your personal assistant do? If your personal assistant is just writing your emails, maybe. But I still don't think like that an AI could, for example, replace a personal assistant. I don't
Oh
think that
no,
could
yeah,
happen.
yeah,
But like,
that's true.
could I see a personal assistant maybe using an AI? Perhaps. And we also get a little bit funny in this, because I guess nowadays when we colloquially say AI, we're just talking about, like these large language models, these like mini
Mostly,
assistants,
yeah.
ChatGPT and stuff. I have worked with somebody once who referred to all AI just like my little assistant. And it took me a while to realize, oh, I thought you just had like a young, protege who was writing your emails. Oh, no, 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 you just have a legit one. There's some definitely cool stuff that it can do. I have a buddy. Actually, I don't think I can talk about this because I think he wouldn't appreciate me talking about it necessarily. But there are some companies who are basically revolutionizing the movie industry using artificial intelligence. Basically, a lot of the stuff that, like, I guess the simplified version would be trying to fix up certain simulations in movies so that you can do more realistic physics
Mm-hmm.
and that you can basically perfect the green screens. I guess that's enough of an explanation that it's vague enough that
Okay.
that it's not problematic. But yeah, TLDR, I think it definitely has potential. I think that's maybe the value of having an artificial intelligence program where you open up that kind of like door and perspective to more people. And I think that's where it's important, where you don't just have cranky, slightly unstable people who run X, formerly known as Twitter, being at the forefront of the conversation, but also you have like, the average Joe who can learn about it and actually do something with it and then have some sort of an impact. I think this is one of those fields where you need multiple perspectives.
Mm.
You need multiple perspectives so it doesn't get hijacked. And you should regulate it, but that's the European Union's job. I'm not paid for that.
Some random AI conversation. So I think we are done with today's topic. Or do you have anything else that you really want to share with this lovely audience?
I mean, do you have anything else that you want to ask?
I have asked all of my questions that I had for you.
Okay. Honestly, I just want to say that I am incredibly grateful for everybody who actually takes the time to listen to our ramblings, who actually takes the time to engage with the podcast, everybody who has given like any sort of like a positive comment. I also really want to say thanks to the previous generation of international student ambassadors who kind of like, in a sense, working with all of you guys gave me these ideas and gave me the ability to notice some things that could be done to add a little bit of value to the university. And also, I mean, like, again, special thanks to my supervisor, Heli, who is, some would say, crazy enough to support me, and others would say brave enough, and I would just say, who believes in me enough to actually give me a little bit of, an opportunity to hopefully share meaningful stories with all of you guys. So, do you want to have the opportunity to say goodbye to the camera?
Oh,
Or should I? What makes you feel more comfortable?
no, I think I'm good. I'm not as attached to this camera as I'm enjoying the conversation with you.
We almost broke that camera once.
Are you sure that should be on the podcast?
Oh, it's well known. I'm kidding.
Never happened.
Oh, no. I mean, actually, it almost flipped over once, but like we caught it and we put it together. That's why it's important to handle the studio responsibly. So everybody who uses the studio, I invite you to use it with love, care, so that we can use it for years to come. Well, anywho, Alina, thank you very much for taking the time to actually have a conversation with me.
Yeah, in our busy schedules, having a podcast together is actually the only way we can
It's lovely that we
talk.
actually made it work. Can we reach each other? I think the foot works. Close enough as an approximation to a fist bump. You guys, if you want to see like some more serious episodes, go to the previous ones. If you want to see other more serious episodes, go to the next episodes. Again, thank you guys very much for listening to us. If you want to learn more about JYU, check out our website, check out the links in the description. And honestly, have an awesome weekend. Kiitos ja moikka. Cheers.